Sail away, sail away, sail away, sail away, sail away. Okay, we are live. Welcome, friends, foes, to the MMA Huddle live chat. Thank you all for who are going to tune in. And of course, as you saw for the kind of cover, it's will losing lead you to UFC gold? That is the question I am proposing. Is it beneficial to lose? Is it beneficial in the UFC to have the brand name to get further in your career? Obviously, we see with Henry Cejudo taking the Jose Aldo option. Now, I don't know if Jose Aldo was proposed only, not Aljamain Sterling or PT Yan. For me, I feel a bit aggrieved that PT Yan and Aljamain Sterling have done everything they should be doing in the bantamweight division. Jose Aldo lost a split decision to Moraes, albeit a questionable decision lost. Don't get me wrong. I thought Jose Aldo, I think everyone else was a bit flabbergasted about how good he looked. Performed very well at 135. We'll be talking about a couple of topics I'm going to talk about is TRT. 7 years since TRT has been around or been allowed or been used in the UFC as a acceptable doping methodology. And last but not least, we're going to talk about, what was my other little topic here? I've got my little notes here, folks. Give me 2 seconds. Where is my notes? My notes. Oh, yeah. Dan Hooker as well, and Paul Felder, the recent bout at New Zealand. And again, join in the conversation, drop in questions, any thoughts or comments on the topic matters we are talking about, or anything you wish to discuss as well. This live chat is going to be going on weekly, and in time, build it up and get more people tuning in to join in the conversation. So do please give us a like and a subscribe. Thank you all for who have subscribed so far on the channel. Me and Will appreciate each and every one of you. We hope you enjoy the recent interviews I've been posting out lately for the UFC London card. If you jump into our kind of screen, you'll see there where the interviews are for the UFC London card. I've got Mike Grundy coming up as well. I've been posting that interview, and I've also got, who else is the other fighters? I've got a couple of other fights from the UFC card and Cage Warriors as well. So I'm not going to give away all the fighters I'm going to be popping up there, but if you keep your eyes on it, if you want to join interviews, give you a bit of insight, maybe to help you with your betting and picks, do check those interviews out. We have got the latest breakdown as well for the Benavidez Figueiredo card, as that is on the profile. Do hit that if you're interested in seeing the breakdown, who we pick. If you do disagree with the picks, feel free to comment on who you think will win. Again, we have went a bit crazy, me and Will, weirdly enough, and we do our picks separately. Went for Tybura, which a lot, seems some people are a bit surprised with, but it's a heavyweight division. You don't know what's going to happen with that. So like I said, let's jump in to the start of the conversation, which is, will UFC gold get you to a UFC title shot? Jose Aldo, technically, he's on two losses, and he gets a UFC title shot against Henry Cejudo. You look at previously Holly Holm, when she fought Jermaine Durandame, she was on a losing. I think Frankie Edgar got a title fight against Jose Aldo as well. He had lost. There are other fighters off the top of my head going back. I think Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell back in the day, that he was, even though it was heavyweight, different weight class, still on a losing streak. Jose Aldo, I believe, is he's 3-5 in his last 8 fights as well. So it's not looking super promising. Now, Aljamain Sterling, if you've looked online and seen on the social media thing, he's basically said effectively what the UFC do. They are milking Jose Aldo for what they can. They know that Jose Aldo probably hasn't got the legs on him to go for as long as Aljamain Sterling or PT Yan. They know that PT Yan and Aljamain Sterling have got a bit more time on them. He is a bigger name, so to speak, Jose Aldo. He does carry a lot more weight. Aljamain Sterling made a beautiful comment about how they could potentially use Jose Aldo to sell more tickets, maybe, or sell more pay-per-views in Brazil. Very, very interesting perspective on that. But all in all, if you're looking at pay-per-views, how do you make yourself big stars? You give them big opportunities like Aljamain Sterling and PT Yan. They've done everything the UFC have asked them to do. Every fighter they put in front of them, they go there, they fight, they compete, and they beat them. It's a tough one for them. Does Aljamain Sterling have a rematch against Moraes to maybe get a shot at the title? Does Peter Yan fight Moraes? Who does Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling fight next. I think if you put the two of them against each other, you could put the two of them against each other on the same card as Jose Aldo and Henry Cejudo, and one of them could step in as a replacement. I just think you're getting rid of two top contenders. I don't see the point in getting rid of two top contenders. I think you should have matched one of them up, and then maybe you could have done Aljamain Sterling and or Peter Yan against Jose Aldo. I think that would have been a superb matchmaking there. But the UFC have made a decision. I'd love to know your thoughts on the fact that fighters with losing streaks get a stab at the title. It's sometimes circumstances arise, like Yoel Romero was fighting Adesanya, another fighter on a losing record, going in, getting a title fight. That was more of a case of they couldn't go further down the rankings to find someone because the guys, because of the circumstances with injuries to Jared Cannonier, Darren Till as well. It was just, and Calvin Gastelum had just fought Israel Adesanya. It was a bit of a circumstantial kind of position for them. And Yoel Romero technically is higher ranked. But you do question then the kind of value of the title fights if guys coming in and women coming in with losing streaks are getting a stab at titles. Now, by all means, I don't mind too much. Yeah, bro, I'm trying to do a Bull Raw MMA podcast, folks. He does a live stream on his breakdowns. Do check it out and give his channel a... He's got a channel there that he pumps out there. Yeah, bro, I'm going live weekly, trying to do some just general chit chat. I think it's interesting to see how the UFC are going to spin the Adesanya and Yoel Romero. It's still kind of going on the radar, that card, if I'm honest with you. It's going to creep up to us very soon. And well, it's not this weekend, but I believe it's next weekend off the top of my head. There's that many cards coming up now. It's kind of gone under the radar, in my opinion. I think Adesanya is a huge figure to sell. You could be selling it a lot better. Henry Cejudo and Jose Aldo will sell well because of the kind of controversy, because there's two contenders there in Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan. I think the fans are more forgiving of the scenario with Adesanya and Romero because of the injuries. But it would almost be like saying, okay, cool, we're going to give Paul Felder a shot against Khabib next. It's a bit unfair and it's a bit silly, but I'd love to know your thoughts, folks, on who you're picking for the kind of thoughts about losing records, title shots. I love the idea of somebody fights anyway, because some fights are just great. MMA, it always surprises you with matchups. I think Henry Cejudo will be probably more suited for this fight against Jose Aldo. But one thing Henry Cejudo's done, he's always had good wrestling, as we know, gold medalist. Can he get Jose Aldo down? Because Jose Aldo has got a tremendous MMA wrestling defense. We've seen it plenty of times. I'd love to see how he does in that performance, and it's going to be good to see how he does. Let's go on to the next subject, folks, that I'm looking to talk about today, which is, I saw it online, 7 years since TRT was removed and accepted in the UFC. So you got to think back to TRT Vitor was 7 years ago, which kind of blew my socks away, really. There's that many fight cards, that much action these days. It's hard to get your head around and see all this happening, but I found it fantastic to see that. I thought, I miss those days. I don't know how you all feel. I'd love to know if you miss TRT Vitor. I do, spinning around, whipping those kicks in, knocking the wheels off Luke Rockhold, which was an insatiable, fantastic, sexy knockout, I have to say. And to be honest, Luke Rockhold couldn't knock the skin off a rice pudding of late. It looks like he's a shadow of him for himself. Yeah, I love the TRT days. Dan Henderson as well. You know, you had a plethora of fighters that were using it for medical purposes because they needed it, and some benefited very well. And we got some fights, like, it just takes you back to Pride. Let's be honest. If you don't know what Pride is, ladies and gentlemen, if you've heard of Pride promotion, if you've heard of the fights that Pride put on, and you've never really watched them, it was basically UFC, early days as well. Everyone was jacked to the gills, but there was tremendous fights. Like, it was Alistair Overeem, horse meat induced violence. You know, if you remember Brock Lesnar fought Alistair Overeem and they both went on the scales, and you just stood there and went, yeah, they're more Mexican than American. You know, Brock was just jacked as well. And if you go back to Pride, there was some fantastic matchups. In the TRT days in the UFC, it kind of brought reminiscence of that. Now, I'm not a fan of people using anabolic steroids to enhance their performance and enhance themselves on a fighting perspective. I think if you're looking at for vanity and you want to go to the gym and do what you like, knock yourself out, ladies and gentlemen. Get jacked off the gills, be redhead. I don't really care, so you wear a little tank top all day long. But when it comes to the competition in MMA, I think be as level playing field as you can. Supplements, as in over-the-counter legal ones, do them. But TRT days, that's when you had people taking a mick. I think it was Bigfoot Silva, if you recall, he actually had to take it for medical reasons because of something to do with his pancreas or something about a medical reason why he had to take it. Medically, he would have been very poorly if he didn't. So at least he was taking it, and to be fair, didn't need it. It was absolutely enormous, but for medical reasons, he had to. But then you saw Vitor take it, and that dude went from having an awesome early career, testing came in, career went a bit meh, and then TRT came in, his career went back up again. I'm not saying Vitor's career benefited purely on the TRT basis, but it benefited purely on the TRT. You remember the John Jones fight with Vitor Belfort, jacked to the gills. There's literally no neck. He was just like veins were popping out, and he gets that armbar and he's jerking it. And John Jones just somehow heard the pop, pop, pop and got out and grinded out. Vitor now, he might actually tell a lie. Vitor now is back on those supplements. If you've looked at him online, he's back on it again. No problems with that. He's going to ONE FC. Knock yourself out, lad. Get on it and have some fun fights. Again, Vitor Belfort, I don't care if you're doing it. As long as you're on a promotion who don't do too much testing. If you look, Josh Barnett must be gutted. He got pulled away from a Bellator card because he got popped again. He thought, I went to Bellator, they probably won't do much testing, I'll be all right, and he's got popped again. But anyone have any memories from the TRT days, any particular fights that stick out to them? Love to know any thoughts that you had back then on what TRT meant for your kind of time of watching MMA. I loved the early Pride days and like even the early UFC days when you had like Coleman and Randall, just these huge men, and then you had Dad Bod Fedor. It was fantastic days of watching MMA. And don't get me wrong, I love MMA these days. I'm just going a bit old. Back in the day. So smash a like if you enjoyed the TRT days and the early days of MMA, and hit that subscribe button as well if you're tuning in. And by the way, I've got a brew on. If you like a cup of tea like me, nice and strong, no sugar, good on you. Now, my other subject was the Dan Hooker Felder bout. I don't know how everyone else scored it at home. Me and Will talked about it on the latest podcast breakdown that we did for the Benavidez Figueiredo card. We brushed over it. I still look back at it, and I still pick Paul Felder as the winner of that fight. The punch stats don't relate necessarily to damage, and they don't also correlate to the overall picture of the fight. I could throw 100 punches, and my opponent could throw 100 punches in a fight. If I throw 100 punches in one round, and my opponent then, therefore, splits his punches over the next few rounds, he should, in theory, win. And this is kind of what the Hooker situation was. Hooker had a higher number of punches landed in a couple of rounds, and then Felder overall landed more shots over more rounds. And it was a tight fight. I'm not going to say it's a robbery. I just think it was a heartbreak for Paul Felder to come there, put himself on the line like that, and come away with, apparently I found out it was $83,000 less, which is another gripe of mine. I'd love to know your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, on please join in the conversation below. I'd love to know your thoughts on the bonus, the win bonus that you get. It's such a dated scenario and perplexing to me. I would love fighters to just get that flat fee, not have to worry about if I lose, I don't get that extra pay. The guys who come in and girls who come into UFC start on 10 and 10. Just start them on 20. Just give them 20. They're not fighting because they're getting 20 grand. They're fighting because they're in the UFC and they want to be the best and they want to win. Why put that pressure on them of that? If I get that, I double my money. There shouldn't be that pressure on a fighter. And psychologically, it gets their mind clearer for the fight. The 50 G's at the end, where bonus, that's more of an incentive. I think if they did maybe offer a more, maybe a couple more bonuses here and there. Instead, they might see more of a finishes. I know ACA, is it now? It's not AC. Yeah, ACA, I think it is. He changed the name to the Russian promotion. If you finish the fight within the time limit, you get a bonus, no matter what. There's no, oh, it's fight of the night, performance of the nights, and all this. They will go and let you get, if you finish in that fight in Russia, they will give you that bonus, and I love that. I love that kind of idea. And if the UFC implemented that, give the people a flat fee. So like the likes of Paul Felder doesn't have to stress about that $83,000, which is ruddy fecking a lot, isn't it? Let's be honest with you. Paul Felder doesn't have to worry about that amount there. He has that kind of off his mind. His daughter's paid and sorted for school, education, trips, all that good stuff. But now you got Paul Felder in a precarious position. He's still one of the top guys to fight. He still brings it every time. But he's very good on the commentary. Very good on the commentary. He's got a potential gig on the commentary, which would be another venture for him. Does he need to keep fighting? I'm sure now he feels like the title fight is too far away. I'd love to know what your thoughts are, what Paul Felder should do next. I would not be agreed to seeing him fight again. And maybe in a Dublin card. See him in UFC Dublin. His last fight, if he really wants to, if he's considering retirement. Give him a good bout, give him a good name, and maybe he could finish on a high there if that's his thought. In regards to Dan Hooker, he's talked on social media, and you look at that lightweight division. It's very thin on the opposition he could fight, and the only name that's popped up is Dustin Poirier. And Dustin Poirier's bit back. Dustin Poirier is a great guy in that promotion because he never says no to a fight. And he's straight away said that, and immediately. I love the idea of Dan Hooker and Dustin Poirier. I'd love to know what you think, people, about Dan Hooker and Dustin Poirier. It's a disgustingly savage fight. That the boxing of Dustin will be a hard one for Dan Hooker, because if you look at the way Dustin fought against Gaethje, he just has a relentless, he just has a toughness that he just kept going. He could have a higher output potentially than Paul Felder with the boxing, and he could just light Dan up. Dan Hooker, for me, has the potential to break in fights. If you can just wear him enough, like Barboza was, I think I'd go with Dustin Poirier. My initial thoughts are Dustin Poirier would win that fight. I don't know what you guys think between Dan Hooker and Dustin Poirier. If that fight materializes, I'd love to see it. And yeah, so that is it. That is the kind of little quick chat I'm doing tonight, the live chat. Again, I'd love to know your thoughts on losing fights and still getting title shots. I'd love to know what you people think about people who have a losing record and get a title fight. I'd love to know about your memories of TRT days in the UFC, any memories that pop up to you. And of course, I mentioned there Dan Hooker and Paul Felder. What future do you see for both parties, for Paul Felder and Dan Hooker after that? Questionable decision. I think a draw would have been ideal. I think a draw would have been superb for the both of them. But folks, thank you all for joining in. Again, if you can, hit the like button, drop your questions, and always join in the podcast. I'll try and do these probably a later date because there's people. Here we go. Paul Felder got robbed. Is he? I got to say, mate, I felt aggrieved for. I felt a bit tough for him. That's why I thought it was a tight fight. It was a tight fight, brother. It was. I thought it wasn't a massive gulf, and that's why I would have been happy with a draw. I think a lot of people at home would love to see a draw as well with that Paul Felder and Dan Hooker fight, because if you said Paul Felder won, there would have been a lot of people kicking off. But yeah, I'm with you, Izzy. I think a tough one. Do I train? I do, my friend. I do. I train mixed martial arts. I compete as well. Amateur and pro. So if that helps answer your question, I hope it does, my friend. Well, I did amateur, now I do pro. I don't do both. I don't jump back into amateur for a bit of shit and giggles. I only do pro now. But yeah. So folks, I'd love to know what your thoughts are about losing records though in MMA. I still kind of clutch straws at the idea of Jose Aldo getting a title fight against Henry Cejudo. Planning on going to the UFC. Which card? Do you mean to compete, my friend, or do you mean to watch as a spectator? Because I will be at the UFC London card, which is going on in, I want to say March 17th. Yeah, March 17th. I don't know what bloody day it is. I've got a ticket. How bad's that? I'm going to UFC London card, so I'll be there. So if anyone in the UK watches this, compete. Oh, mate, if I got signed to UFC, I I took my mum and dad off. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that'll happen. I'm no spring chicken, my friend. I just do it for the love of the sport, and I've got that itch to compete. Yeah, I'm from a small place with a tiny gym, and a competition level here. I went across and trained with Darren Till, Mike Grundy. I went across and trained with like Sean Carter, Jack Mason's gym at BKK guys. I've trained, loving a cup of tea though. Here we go.